What is completely legal, but still a dick move? Taking something out of someone's shopping cart. Line/queue cutting. Fuck you if you do this. You're an asshole and everyone hates you. Also, when a new cashier opens up their register and says I can take the next person in line, and then some oaf way back in the queue scurries over there like the rat they are. Turning the light out in a public bathroom while people are in the stalls. A coworker at a past job did this to me. Turned off the light to the bathroom while I was shitting. I shouted, "Hey, someone's in here." He laughed. That laugh was the biggest mistake he made. Had he not laughed, I would never have known who turned the light off, but he did laugh, and I recognized the laugh of Jim from Sporting Goods. All our schedules were posted weekly on a corkboard near the employee break room. I went back and checked the Sporting Goods department schedule and memorized it. Jim would be clocking out the same time I was going to lunch. At lunch I shadowed him out to the parking lot and made note of his vehicle. He would not get away with this. Later that day, when I got home from work, I drank 3 glasses of water with around 12 tablespoons of Metamucil. Around 24 hours later I was ready to poop again. I grabbed an empty masonry jar from the garage and shit in it. I capped the jar and put it outside on the back patio. When I arrived at work the next day, I had the jar with me. I saw Jim's car. Thankfully he parked at the end of the parking lot away from cameras like a good employee. We were supposed to park at the back end of the parking lot so customers could have the closest spaces to the store entrance. I took the jar over to his car, made double sure the coast was clear, and checked the door. Praise Crom for Jim did not lock his door. I uncapped the jar and dumped it on his driver's seat. It took a few shakes to get it to slide out of the jar, and it smelled putrid as all hell. I'm sure it would smell even more awful later. After baking in a closed up car on a sunny afternoon in July, I discarded the jar in a dumpster behind the Circle K and then continued my regular programming for the rest of the day as a electronics employee for a heartless mega corporation. Sadly, I never witnessed Jim's reaction to the turd in his car. I planned to go outside at lunch and see if I could catch a glimpse of him discovering his present as he went home. Alas, it was not to be. I got held up that day with a TV sale, and by the time I clocked out for lunch he was already gone. I imagine it was absolutely delectable. I smiled to myself now, imaging the revolt and horror on his face. The only epilogue I have for the story is that several days later I overheard 2 coworkers talking in the break room. One of them said, "This town is going to hell. Did you hear what happened to Jim from Sporting Goods? A hobo or something took a shit in his car. Never turn the light out in a public bathroom while people are still in the stalls." To intentionally mislead people by taking something out of context or omitting some relevant information/facts. Edit. Replaced leave out with omitting. So mainstream media and Reddit. Hoarding as many patents as you can with no plans to use any of them. Then suing companies for patent infringement. I thought this said parents the first time I read it. I was like, wow, people really go around stealing people's parents? That is a dick move. Since my friend got mugged, apparently robbing someone for something worth less than $500 just means you get to fly off the radar for a while. Perfect for making up the difference in a bill. So, we had accurate descriptions of the guys, the exact address of the apartment they emerged from with a knife, and the detective said we don't have any previous reports, so we'll just keep your complaint on file. WTF. Luckily, the guy was dumb enough to commit the same crime twice, and finally got charged and arrested. Listening to music without headphones in public transportation. Listening to music without headphones in public. Fixed. To take up the handicap stool when someone just behind you needs it. It happened to me when I had chronic pain so bad that I could barely walk. When I noticed the kid in front of me going for it, I raised my voice while politely asking them to use a different stall. When he locked the door, I immediately understood why old people look like they want to throw their cane like a spear when a teenager does something mildly irritating. Members of the parliament voting for larger wages and special pensions. This happened for the first time 4 years ago in my country, and ever since then, they made them larger and larger 3 other times. Buying a person's debt, lien or mortgage, using the loan agreement clause, that allows for abrupt changes to the terms and conditions, and calling for either the entire debt in 60 to 90 days or eviction or forfeiture of an asset. Convincing the elderly and infirm to sell out their estates to you from underneath the rest of their family. I grew up in a small farm town and this happened several times. Grandma and grandpa would get old, and one of their kids would leave everything behind, and work the family farm, and live in the farmhouse with the expectation that they would take things over and preserve it for the next generation, something their now elderly parents had expressed for decades. An opportunist makes a few social calls and obtains a few signatures and adjustments to the will from extremely elderly people who don't even remember the names of their children. And just like that, everyone is out on the street and said opportunist moves in. The elderly people have no clue what just happened. If your family owns any estate, put it in a trust with trustworthy board members / executor so that con artists can't pull a fast one on your elderly family members and screw your family out of its legacy. Marry a guy, let him buy you a house, let him work his ass off for you. Then let him walk in on you banging the next door neighbor in his bed, hand him divorce papers, start living on a couch and still pay for that house he bought for you. You could always just not marry a lazy jobless woman. Bringing a baby into a movie theater or expensive restaurant. Not only are you basically telling everybody I'm an inconsiderate fucktard, but you're also shitting on those parents who were considerate enough to find the babysitter so they can have an enjoyable night out. And trust me, they hate your guts too. I also have no problem calling you out, so you better pray I'm never around when you pull this stupid shit. US companies not giving employees at least a minimum of a month's worth of vacation in a year. Tons of employees don't even get vacation, and the standard for the ones that do get it seems to be 3 weeks, 15 days, not a lot of time spread over a year. I had one employer try to offer me 2 weeks, so I required more before I'd accept the offer. Also, companies are moving to this unlimited PTO BS now. All it means is the company doesn't have to keep track of or pay out any accrued vacation, so it saves them money. But you better believe, if an employee tries to take more than about 3 weeks, the company is gonna start asking why they are taking so much vacation. Adverse possession law. This law makes it legal for a squatter to steal your land / property. Example, let's say you own property in several states, including mine. You reside across the country and rarely ever come to my state to check on your property. You simply keep the taxes paid. I move into said property without your knowledge or consent. Or I move onto the property and build a house. I make improvements to the property such as grass cutting, tree removal or house painting. I have my mail delivered there, turn on the utilities, and never hide the fact that I'm living there. My presence on your property is well known by friends, family and neighbors. In my specific state, one is eligible to make an adverse possession claim after a period of 10 years. If in that time period you have not come to check on your property and remove me from it, regardless of private property postage, I'm legally able to file this claim and steal your property. This is because the law prefers adverse possession to undeveloped land. So basically, I have illegally trespassed for 10 years and my reward is legal theft of what is rightfully yours. Letting someone go / firing them with no prior notice. I'm always confused by why an employee has to give a minimum 2-week notice before leaving for another job, but a company can uproot your entire life with an hour meeting. I'm speaking from experience because I'm currently looking for work after my company let me go despite having rave reviews for my work. Calling the police on someone who is depressed and they get locked up in a hospital against their will. Being in a clearly losing position in a timed online chess match, and instead of forfeiting or making a last-ditch gambit to save the game, you simply wait for the timer to tick all the way to 0 in the hopes your opponent will get bored and forfeit. The number of opponents that do this is the sole reason I switched from 10-minute games to a bullet format. This mostly happens to guys, but meeting up with a girl for a date and basically being used to get a free meal with no intention of dating the person they're with. I've been lucky lately. Nearly all the dates I've had in the past few months have either offered to pay, have paid for their own, or actually argue with me to let them pay. It's a nice change from my ex who just expected me to do it. Yelling at the poor cashier for how much an item has gone up in price. I don't think the customer understands cashiers don't set the prices. Going to a restaurant and order nothing but water for an hour straight. Hydration is key. Chewing food with your mouth open. Cops lying to you. No refunds.